Beyond the neon horizon lies a place where the past and the future finally meet in a burst of light and color. Join our journey into the unknown as we explore the stories of those who dared to cross the line. Click subscribe now and follow us toward the next big revelation. I walked into the restaurant my daughter owned and felt like a stranger who had wandered into the wrong building. The exposed brick walls, the Edison bulb lighting, the custom millwork bar running the length of the room, I recognized none of it, and yet I had paid for all of it. Not a cent of my money had gone into a single decision. I hadn't been consulted on the layout, the color scheme, the menu concept. I had simply been the account the money came from. My name is Gerald Whitmore. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years working as a civil engineer for the city of Edmonton, retiring 4 years ago with a pension, a modest investment portfolio, and a house in Riverbend that my wife and I had bought in 1989 for $187,000, and that was now worth considerably more. My wife Carol died 3 years ago, pancreatic cancer. We found out in October, and she was gone by February. The doctor said it was unusually fast. I said nothing to that because there was nothing to say. My daughter Claire is 34. She studied hospitality management at MacEwan, worked in Vancouver for a few years at a boutique hotel, then came back to Edmonton saying she wanted to open her own place. She had vision, she said. She had a concept. She had a location on 124th Street that was perfect, she said, that was about to be snapped up by someone else if she didn't move immediately. She needed $310,000. I was sitting in my kitchen when she asked me. The same kitchen where Carol had made coffee every morning for 27 years, where we had helped Claire with homework at the island, where we had talked about everything and nothing for 3 decades. I looked out the window at the backyard. Carol's vegetable garden had gone untended since she died. I kept meaning to do something with it and never did. How did you arrive at that number, I asked. She had it all worked out. The build-out of the space was $180,000. Commercial kitchen equipment was another $65,000. Licensing, permits, initial inventory, working capital to cover the first 3 months of operation, it added up, she said, to just over $310,000. She had a business plan. She had a projected break-even timeline. She slid a folder across the island to me. What about a bank loan, I asked. She had tried. The bank wanted 2 years of operating history she didn't have, collateral she couldn't offer, a co-signer she couldn't find. Her partner, a man named Derek, who I had met twice and liked not at all, had contributed $40,000 from his own savings. Her father-in-law, Derek's father, had offered $25,000. But the gap remained enormous, and I was the only person in her life who could fill it. "Dad," she said, "you've always told me you wanted to support my dreams. This is my dream." Carol would have known what to do. Carol had always been the one who could see through the performance and find the actual question underneath. I had loved that about her for 35 years and missed it every single day since February. I took the folder. I told Claire I needed a week to think. I spent that week reading the business plan, talking to a friend from my engineering days who had started a small construction company, looking at comparable restaurant spaces on 124th Street. The plan was thorough. The numbers were optimistic, but not impossible. Claire was smart and driven, and she had grown up watching Carol run a household with meticulous organization. She had the temperament for it, I thought. I also thought about the retirement account. After Carol's illness, the treatments, the private care, the things insurance didn't cover, I had dipped into savings more than I had planned. What remained was comfortable, but it was not infinite. $310,000 was not a trivial sum. It was a significant portion of the security I had built over 31 years of bridge assessments and project bids and early morning commutes. But she was my daughter, my only child, and Carol was not there to help me decide. On the 7th day, I called Claire. "I'll help you," I said. "But I need you to understand this is a loan, not a gift. I need it back. Not immediately, not with pressure, but eventually. As the restaurant establishes itself, this is my retirement. I am not in a position to give it away." "Of course," she said. "Dad, I would never treat this as anything but a loan. This is everything to you, and I know that. I will pay you back every cent. I promise." I transferred $310,000 from my investment account into her business account on a Thursday morning in March. She sent me a message that afternoon that I still have on my phone. Dad, I am sitting in the empty restaurant right now looking at these walls and I just started crying. I cannot believe you trusted me with this loan. I will make you proud. I will pay you back. I love you. I read it twice, put my phone down, and went to make dinner for one. The build-out took 4 months. Claire sent me photos occasionally, the bar going in, the tile work in the kitchen, the light fixtures being hung. I offered to come and see the progress in person. She always had a reason why it wasn't a good time. The contractors were in the way. Derek was handling the walkthroughs. She would let me know when there was something worth seeing. I stopped offering after the third time. The restaurant opened on a Saturday in late October. Claire had named it Birch and Salt. The reviews in the first few weeks were good. A mention in View Weekly, a write-up in Edmonton Journal that described the menu as confident prairie cooking with a modern sensibility. She called me to read the journal piece over the phone, and I heard the pride in her voice and felt it too. That was my daughter. That was real. She invited me to dinner twice in those first 2 months. Both times I sat at a corner table and ordered from a menu I had helped bring into existence and watched the room fill up with people who had no idea who I was or why I was there. Claire came to my table briefly, each visit, distracted, managing staff, moving quickly. Both times she promised we would have a proper sit-down soon. Both times that sit-down never happened. 6 months after the opening, I asked about the loan. I texted her on a Sunday. Claire, I don't want to create pressure, but it would help me to know if you've thought about a repayment structure. Nothing formal, just a general plan. She responded 2 days later. Dad, we're still in the investment phase. Margins in hospitality are thin in year 1. Derek and I are putting everything back into operations. Can we revisit in 6 months? 6 months later, I asked again. Dad, we had a rough summer. Staffing issues? Supply chain problems? You know how it's been everywhere. I promise we haven't forgotten. Just need a bit more time. I put my phone down and sat in my kitchen for a long time. I found out about the grand opening party the way I had been finding out about most things in my daughter's life that year through someone else. My neighbor Margaret, who had watched Claire grow up and still followed her on social media, mentioned it at the end of October while we were both putting out recycling bins. Big party at the restaurant on Saturday, she said. Looks lovely. You must be excited. I did not know what she was talking about. I went inside and looked at Claire's Instagram for the first time in months. The post had gone up 3 days earlier. Birch and Salt, 1-year anniversary celebration, by invitation only. Saturday, October 28th. We're so grateful for this community. I had not received an invitation. I texted Claire. I saw the post about the anniversary party. Will I be getting an invitation? She responded 6 hours later. Oh my gosh, Dad, I'm so sorry. I thought Derek was handling the family invites. Of course you're coming. I'll add you to the list. She did not send a formal invitation. She did not follow up. I drove to the restaurant on Saturday evening with a bottle of wine I had picked up at Willow Park and stood in front of a young man at the door with a clipboard who scrolled through his list twice before finding my name, handwritten at the bottom. Gerald Whitmore. +1? Just me, I said. He waved me in with the practiced indifference of someone who had been dealing with awkward situations all evening. The restaurant was full. I recognized almost no one. There were people from Edmonton's food community. I recognized a few faces from the Journal coverage, a local chef I had seen on television. There were Derek's friends, young men in sport coats, talking loudly near the bar. There were women in groups who photographed their drinks before tasting them. There was a table near the window where Derek's parents sat with a cluster of their friends, prominently positioned, at ease, clearly part of the inner circle. I found a spot near the wall and accepted a glass of wine from a server who did not make eye contact. Claire appeared from the kitchen looking radiant in a dark green dress I had never seen. She worked the room with the ease of someone who had been doing this her whole life, touching shoulders, laughing at the right moments, filling the space with her presence. She found me eventually, about 40 minutes after I arrived. Dad, you made it. She hugged me quickly, already looking over my shoulder. It looks incredible, I said. Doesn't it? We've come so far. She was beaming. I have to go. I'm about to do the remarks. But I'm so glad you're here. She was gone before I could say anything else. The remarks came 20 minutes later. Claire stood near the bar holding a microphone, and the room quieted, and I moved to where I could see her properly, standing next to a couple I didn't know who smelled pleasantly of expensive cologne. A year ago, she began, this room was empty, and today it is full, and that is everything. She paused, composed herself. I want to thank the people who made Birch and Salt possible. First, Derek, my partner in every sense. She smiled at him across the room. You believed in this, even when I wasn't sure I did. Applause. To Derek's parents, Robert and Sandra, who were some of the first people to invest in this vision, with their generous contribution. Your belief in us meant the world when we were just starting out and didn't know if any of this was going to work. More applause. Robert and Sandra raised their glasses. Sandra put her hand to her heart. To Marcus, our head chef, who took a chance on an untested kitchen and made it into something extraordinary, to our incredible staff. To this neighborhood, which welcomed us immediately. She went on for another minute, the food community, her mentors from Vancouver, the MacEwan program. She thanked everyone with specificity and warmth. She did not say my name, $310,000. Gone from my account 18 months ago. And she thanked Robert and Sandra for $25,000 and did not say my name. I stood against the wall after the applause faded and waited to feel something simpler than what I was feeling. Anger, I could have handled. Anger has clean edges. What I felt was more like the moment after a vehicle accident, the strange quiet of realizing the damage without yet understanding how permanent it is. I found the washroom near the back of the restaurant, past the kitchen pass-through, and stood at the sink for a while with the tap running. The fixtures were brushed brass. Nice selection. I hadn't been consulted on those either. When I came out, Claire was nearby talking to a woman with a press lanyard around her neck. I waited. When the woman moved away, I stepped over. It was a lovely speech, I said. Thank you. Claire was still in performance mode, still bright and warm and slightly elsewhere. I'm sorry, it ran long. I always over-prepare. You thanked Robert and Sandra by name. She looked at me. You thanked them for $25,000. I gave you $310,000, and you didn't mention me once. Dad. She stopped. Her voice shifted. I didn't want to make it about money in front of everyone. You made it about money. You quantified their contribution and thanked them for it publicly. You simply erased mine entirely. It's different, she said. They're family. You're family too, but you and I have an arrangement. A financial arrangement. I didn't want to make that weird. A financial arrangement. Yes, that's exactly what it is. A loan that you have been avoiding discussing for the better part of a year. Her jaw tightened slightly. Dad, this is not the time or the place. No, I said. You're right. It isn't. I set my wine glass on a nearby shelf, thanked a passing server for the evening, and walked to the front of the restaurant, retrieved my coat, and drove home to Riverbend. The highway was quiet. It was late October, and the temperature had dropped, and the city lights refracted strangely through the cold. I drove carefully, the way I had always driven, and I thought about Carol. I thought about the conversation she and I would have had on a night like this, the way she would have listened without rushing to a conclusion, the way she would have eventually said the precise thing that clarified everything. I thought about the fact that she wasn't there to say it. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen island and opened my laptop. I found the original text message from March of the previous year. I cannot believe you trusted me with this loan, and I took a screenshot. I found 2 subsequent texts in which Claire had referenced repaying me, one from April and one from the summer, both of which she had used the word loan without my prompting. I sent the screenshots to my own email and saved them to a folder I labeled simply documentation. Then I called my accountant, who referred me to a lawyer named Patricia Okafor, who worked out of an office near Jasper Avenue. I had an appointment 2 days later. Patricia was in her late 40s, calm and direct, the kind of person who had heard enough family disputes to have stopped being surprised by them, but had not yet stopped caring about them. I laid out the situation. The amount, the timeline, the texts, the silence, the speech, The thanked contribution of $25,000 that was not mine. She read through the screenshots carefully. "This is workable," she said. "The language is clear." She used the word loan herself, without prompting, on multiple occasions. She acknowledged the debt. The question is whether you're prepared for what happens to the relationship when you pursue this. I told her what I had told myself on the drive home from the restaurant, that the relationship had already changed, that I had spent 18 months being managed and deprioritized and finally erased in front of a room full of people who raised their glasses for a couple who gave $25,000. That whatever I was trying to protect by staying quiet had already been taken. Patricia nodded and made a note. We filed a claim with the Court of King's Bench of Alberta 6 weeks later. Breach of agreement. Recovery of $310,000 plus interest at 4.5% from the date of transfer. Claire called me the same evening the papers were served. She did not sound like herself. The warmth, the ease, the performative closeness, all of it had been replaced by something colder and more honest. "Dad, what have you done?" "I've asked to be repaid money I lent you. That's what I've done." "You're suing me." "Your own daughter." "I'm pursuing a legal claim for money. I loaned you in good faith that you have been avoiding discussing for over a year." "Dad, this will destroy the restaurant. If this gets out, if people know we're being sued, the bank will look at our line of credit differently. Suppliers will get nervous. We're not in a position—" "Claire, I gave you $310,000. You told me it was a loan. You used that word yourself. I have it in writing. What did you expect me to do?" She was quiet for a moment. "I thought we were family." "We are family," I said, "which is exactly why this hurts as much as it does." She hung up. Derek called the next morning. I had been waiting for that call. He was measured in a way that felt rehearsed, as though he had practiced the conversation with someone before making it. He used phrases like mutual resolution and no need to escalate, and Claire is devastated. He suggested that we could arrange a repayment conversation privately, without lawyers, without courts, without the strain on everyone involved. I told him that the time for private repayment conversations had been the previous 12 months. I thanked him for calling and ended the call. His parents sent a letter through their own counsel a week later suggesting that my claim was an act of bad faith, that the money had been understood by all parties as a contribution to a family enterprise, and that pursuing legal action against their son's partner was the kind of thing that left lasting damage. The letter had the tone of people who were accustomed to resolving things with a phone call and were genuinely unsettled to find that not working. I gave the letter to Patricia, who filed it appropriately. The months between the filing and the hearing were the quietest months of my life since Carol died. I spoke to Claire 3 times, all brief, all managed through a layer of careful distance that neither of us tried to close. I did not see the restaurant. I did not ask about the menu or the reviews or the staffing. I ate dinner alone most evenings, worked in the garden on weekends. I had finally done something with Carol's vegetable beds, planted tomatoes and green onions in May, and spent Saturday mornings at a coffee shop in Glenora where the owner knew my order. My neighbor Margaret asked about Claire once. I told her things were complicated. She did not push. Margaret was a practical woman who had raised 3 children and survived a divorce in the 90s and understood that some things were not for discussing over the back fence. I did talk to my friend Don, who had been my closest friend since our engineering days. Don had 2 adult sons, both of whom had borrowed money at various points and paid it back without drama. And he was the kind of friend who could be angry on my behalf without making me feel worse about the situation. He was also practical. "You have the messages," he said over the phone one evening. "You have her using the word herself. You'll be fine." "I know I'll be fine with the money," I said. "That's not the part I'm thinking about." "Yeah," he said. "I know." The hearing lasted 2 days. Claire's legal representation was a young woman who was technically capable and argued her case with conviction. The position was that the $310,000 was a parental contribution, an investment in a family venture, a form of support that no reasonable person would expect to be repaid in full with interest, that the casual language in texts was not a legally binding acknowledgement of debt, but simply the way a daughter spoke to her father when she was grateful. Patricia presented the messages methodically. The original text from the day of the transfer: "I cannot believe you trusted me with this loan." The follow-up from April, I want to set up a proper repayment schedule. Just need to get through this first quarter. The text from July, Dad, I haven't forgotten what I owe you. I promise. What I owe you. Her words. Patricia put me on the stand first. She walked me through my career, my retirement planning, Carol's illness and what it had cost, the decision to loan Claire, the money, the conversation in which I had been explicit that this was a loan and that I needed it back. Did you give your daughter $310,000 as a gift, Mr. Whitmore? No. I gave her a loan. I told her directly that it was a loan. She confirmed it was a loan. I have those words in writing. Why didn't you formalize it? A promissory note? A signed agreement? Patricia asked this herself, before opposing counsel could, which I had learned is a technique lawyers use to take the sting out of the obvious question. Because she was my daughter, I said. Because I trusted her. Because I raised her to be a person who keeps her word. That turned out to be a misjudgment on my part, but it was not a misjudgment about the nature of the transaction. We both knew what it was. When Patricia called Claire to the stand, I watched my daughter take the oath and thought about the night she was born, the way Carol had looked at me from the hospital bed, with an exhaustion and a happiness so intertwined, they were indistinguishable. I thought about Claire at 6, sitting in the cab of my truck on a Saturday morning, eating a sausage biscuit from the Tim Hortons on white mud, while I explained how load-bearing walls worked. I thought about a lot of things. Patricia showed Claire the transcript of her own messages. You wrote, on March 14th, the day your father transferred $310,000, quote, I cannot believe you trusted me with this loan. Did you write that message? Yes. You wrote the word loan. Yes. Not contribution. Not gift. Not support. Loan. It was just Claire paused. It was the way I was expressing gratitude. The word loan, specifically. I understand what the word means, she said quietly. I was trying to acknowledge how significant it was. I was trying to be responsible about it. And on April 22nd, you wrote, I want to set up a proper repayment schedule. A repayment schedule is something associated with a loan, not a gift. Is that correct? Claire did not answer immediately. Is a repayment schedule associated with a loan or a gift, Miss Whitmore? A loan, she said. Patricia was very good. She then walked through the anniversary speech. She had the transcript, pulled from the restaurant's own social media where Claire had posted a written version for her followers. She had Claire confirm that Robert and Sandra's $25,000 contribution had been mentioned publicly, by name, with gratitude. She had Claire confirm that $310,000 had not been mentioned at all. Can you explain the difference in treatment? Claire's jaw was set. It was different. They gave a gift. My father and I had a private arrangement. You've just described your father's $310,000 as a private arrangement. Is that another way of saying a loan? Objection, her counsel said. Leading, sustained. But the adjudicator was looking at Claire with an expression that required no interpretation. The decision came 3 weeks later. The adjudicator's written ruling was detailed and clear-eyed. She found that the language in the documented communications demonstrated consistent acknowledgement of a debt and expectation of repayment. She found that the absence of a formal promissory note did not extinguish the obligation when the parties' own written words established the terms. She awarded $310,000 plus interest. With legal costs, the total came to $346,000. I read the ruling at my kitchen island at 7 in the morning with a cup of coffee going cold beside me. I read it once for the decision, and once more for the reasoning. Then I put it down and sat for a while without reading anything. Claire called that afternoon. Her voice was different again, not cold, not managed, but something more like the way she had sounded when she was young, and something had gone genuinely wrong, and she wasn't sure how to handle it. Dad, she said, I don't have that kind of money. I know. The restaurant, if I liquidate, if I pull out that much. I know, Claire. So what do you want me to do? I want you to find a way to pay what you owe, I said. The same thing I would have wanted 12 months ago if you had simply sat down and talked to me about it. She was quiet for a long time. I'm sorry I didn't mention you in the speech, she said finally. I don't know why I did it that way. I thought I think I thought that thanking you for money would make people think you owned the restaurant, that it would undercut me somehow, that it would look like I couldn't do it myself. It made me feel like I didn't exist. I know, she exhaled. I know, Dad. We did not resolve anything else that conversation. But it was the first time in 2 years that I felt I was actually speaking to my daughter, rather than to the version of her that had learned to manage me. She and Derek refinanced the restaurant property and paid the judgment in full 60 days later. The amount landed in my account on a Tuesday morning in February, 4 years to the month after Carol died. I sat with that for a moment before I did anything else. Dawn took me to dinner to celebrate. Nothing fancy, a steakhouse on Calgary Trail where we had eaten probably 100 times over the years and where the staff knew to leave us alone until the food came. We talked about his sons, about a project he was consulting on, about a fishing trip to northern Saskatchewan we had been planning for 2 summers and kept postponing. How does it feel, he asked, when we were on our second beer? Like I got something back that should never have been taken, I said, and like I lost something that I thought I had. He nodded. You didn't lose her, though. I'm not sure what I have of her. But it's more honest than what I had before. That's something, he said. It was. I began talking to Claire again, carefully, in the spring. Monthly calls at first, then dinners twice over the summer. The ease was gone. The ease had been partly performance. I understood now, but something more durable was taking its place. She was learning, I think, to be in relationship with me, as I actually was, rather than as a resource that required management. I was learning to pay attention to the difference. Derek's parents did not send me anything further. Derek himself was cordial at the one dinner where he was present, which I took as a reasonable outcome. In July, I booked a trip, 2 weeks in the Maritime Provinces, Prince Edward Island, Cape Breton, the Cabot Trail. Carol had wanted to drive it for as long as I could remember. She had clipped a piece from a travel magazine about the fall colors along the Cape Breton highlands and put it in the drawer of her bedside table where I had found it when I was sorting her things. I had put it back in the drawer and not looked at it for 3 years. I booked a rental car and a series of small inns and a whale-watching tour out of Cheticamp that the inn owner recommended. I drove through Baddock and stopped at the Alexander Graham Bell Museum because Carol would have found it fascinating, and I wanted to see it for her. I ate lobster rolls on Prince Edward Island, sitting on a picnic table facing the water with the wind coming off the Northumberland Strait, and I thought about her every day, and it was not entirely sad. It was the kind of remembering that feels like presence rather than absence. When I got home, there was a letter in my mailbox. Claire's handwriting. I brought it inside and made coffee before I opened it. I had learned in the past 2 years not to rush certain moments. The letter was 2 pages. She wrote about the restaurant, about how the ruling had forced a financial reckoning that had actually made the business more stable, not less, forced her and Derek to look at the real numbers, reduce some costs they had been avoiding, renegotiate a supplier contract. She wrote that she was sorry. Not the managed apology I had heard from her in the months of lawyers and hearings, but a considered one, the kind that names specific things rather than offering a general sentiment. She wrote, I told myself that not acknowledging you in the speech was about protecting my professional image, but the truth is I was ashamed of needing you. I had wanted to do this on my own, and I couldn't. And instead of being honest about that, I erased you. That was wrong. You deserve to be standing in that room as the person who made it possible, and I denied you that. I don't have an excuse. I only have the fact that I know it now, and I didn't then, and I'm sorry. I read it twice. Then I folded it and set it on the kitchen island. I did not respond immediately. Some letters need to settle before they can be answered. I went out to the backyard and spent the better part of an hour in Carol's garden. The tomatoes had done well this year. The green onions had spread further than I had planted them, which seemed right somehow, the garden doing what it wanted regardless of the plan. I pulled a few weeds, checked the soil, stood for a while in the late afternoon light that came over the back fence at a particular angle in September that I had always liked. I thought about what Don had said. That's something. It was. A month later, I replied to Claire's letter with one of my own, shorter than hers. I did not list grievances or conditions. I wrote that I had read what she said, that I believed her, and that I was willing to move forward from here as long as we moved forward honestly. I wrote that I was going to the Maritimes again the following summer, and that if she wanted to join me for part of it, I would like that. She called me the day she got the letter. I would like that too, she said. The Cabot Trail in October, I said. The colors are supposed to be exceptional. I know, she said. Mom always wanted to go. Yes, I said. She did. We were quiet for a moment, the comfortable kind, the kind that doesn't require filling. I'm going to pay you interest on the interest, she said. I laughed. That's not a thing. I'll figure out how to make it a thing. I laughed again. It had been a while since my daughter had made me laugh. It felt like something returning to its proper place. I am 63 years old. I live in the house in Riverbend that my wife and I bought in 1989. I tend a garden that is thriving without me doing anything particularly right. I have dinner with Dawn at the steakhouse on Calgary Trail at least once a month. I am planning a road trip through Nova Scotia, and I have a letter in my kitchen from my daughter that I have read 4 times now. I gave Claire everything I thought I was supposed to give. She taught me the difference between giving freely and giving without protecting yourself. She taught me that love, real love, can survive a lawsuit. That honesty is harder than management and more worth having. I sued my daughter. I got my money back. I got my daughter back too, slowly, imperfectly, in the way that real things come back, not restored to what they were, but rebuilt into something that can hold weight. I am flying to Halifax in October. Claire is meeting me in Baddock on the Thursday. I hope the light is good.